thanks to Ulrike and the Newton Institute very, very much for the support on putting this on today and for our network more generally. Thanks also very much to Claire Merritt and all the people from the Newton Gateway who've been amazing in putting this event together, and especially Maha Kayouri, without whom we could definitely not have put it on. Okay, so this is the first in-person meeting of the Mathsci-comm network, which is all about the communication of mathematical and data sciences. Now, I don't think, we didn't think that we need to explain to this audience the importance of communication. Mathematics has been impacting on our lives in many, many ways, and that's been the case for a very, very long time. But perhaps now more so than ever, there's kind of like the impact of math and data science on our lives seems to be more important, and it seems to be invading more parts of our lives. So communicating these aspects to the people whose lives are impacted is not only like a desirable extra or like a sort of sideline, an optional sideline, it's actually essential. And that involves involving a range of audiences, communicating to a range of audiences, from teachers to policymakers to mainstream media to all sorts of other sections of the wider public. And of course, many of you here have been doing that very brilliantly for a very long time. So Rachel is going to tell you more about the Mathsci-comm network in a minute. Before that is a quick introduction to us. Yay. So Rachel and I are editors of plus.maths.org. It's a free online platform about mathematics for non-expert audiences. It's mainly got written content, but we do also have a podcast. And the content ranges from basic explainers to in-depth articles or podcasts on particular topics. We produce all this content in direct collaboration with researchers and research groups and organizations. So we are very proud to have a collaboration with the Newton Institute here, and also with the Juniper network of disease modelers and the Maths for Deep Learning research group. And there's people from all these organizations here today. Plus.maths.org has been going since 1997. I've been there since 2005, and you've been there since 2001?
2001, yeah.
It's part of the MMP, which is based next door at the Center for Mathematical Sciences. And plus.maths.org is one project of a whole range of projects that comes under the maths.org umbrella. Our academic director is Julia Gork, who's over there in the audience, and she has been since 2022, following on from John Barrow, who sadly passed away in 2020. I think that's all I want to say about the MMP. Yeah. So I think now it's over to you to talk more about the Mathsci-comm network.
So you'll be hearing from Julia later. So as has already been mentioned, this isn't the first time that we've all been in a room together. This is technically the first in-person event of the Mathsci-comm network, but many of us were here together in January 2023 at the event that the Gateway organised together with Tom King and Kevin McConway and Maha Kayouri, who is briefly not in the room, but Maha has been a huge part both of that event, a huge part of organising this event, and of setting up the network as well. Now for us, that first event in January 2023, it was really eye-opening and it was really inspirational. We knew a lot of people who were in the room. We'd worked with some of them, but we'd never seen them all gathered together in that particular group. And what really emerged out of the day for us was this sort of common sense of purpose that we all had. Everyone was engaged with communicating complex ideas from maths and data science. Everyone was communicating them to a wide variety of audiences, some working with policymakers, some working with mainstream press, some working with funding bodies, some working with different segments of the wider public. But this key theme that kept coming up from us was this sort of shared purpose that we're all communicating ideas to meet some sort of explicit need. And often that need was because the impact those ideas were having on people's lives. So while, we always find the work we communicate incredibly fascinating, the information, it's not always good news. Like, for example, a lot of us were communicating things during the COVID pandemic, and it wasn't necessarily things that people wanted to know, but they needed to know. So I guess for us, this sense of common purpose was what we were communicating was essential for people to know. We couldn't choose, we didn't have the option of choosing what we were going to communicate. We had to communicate the information that needed to be shared, often because of this impact it was having on people's lives. And I sometimes tell a terrible joke that some of my colleagues don't like, that we are the broccoli of science communication. Broccoli is very good for you, and we all need to eat it. There's terrible ways to prepare and present broccoli. There's delicious ways to prepare and present broccoli. And I'm personally very keen to find the most delicious ways. So the thing about that event is there was so much expertise in the room. The speakers were amazing. And there were lots of outcomes from that event. Immediate outcomes. There was some really interesting podcasts produced, some interesting articles, but there was a real desire for a longer term activity to continue on after that event. Tom and Kevin had sort of structured some of the plans for the day and the discussions afterwards around these 5 follow-on proposals from that event, and I think a lot of those will actually feed into discussions later on into today. And of course, the other outcome of this was the Mathsci-comm network. So in consultation with a lot of people who were in the room that day, we applied for an I&I network grant to start up the Mathsci-comm network, and we're incredibly grateful to the I&I for that grant, not only for supporting today's event, but for making it possible to try and keep this community together in the interim, to sort of share ideas, catch up, keep in touch with people's work, and hopefully help each other with our practice. And I think there's sort of also a more idealistic aim that's emerged from discussions from the network. I think we really want to think about how we can help embed comms more systematically into maths and data science, into the way it's taught, into the way it's funded, into the way it's presented. And I think the other aspect that's come up is I think the network really wants to try and identify and develop the things about communicating maths and data science that are different from communicating other types of information. And can we expand the sort of knowledge of communicating maths and data science within the wider field of science communication? Practically, Mathsci-comm is primarily a Slack network. We've got about 100 members from across public sector, academic, industry, organisations. We have monthly Zoom meetings which vary between just informal catch-ups on what everyone's doing to focus small panel discussions on particular topics, to planning meetings for today's event. So that's the other thing that we really wanted to make clear, is today's event is very much a group effort. This is a result of the network as a whole. It has been organised in conjunction with the network. It's in response to the interests of the members of the network, and all of the speakers who you will hear from today really are drawn from the fantastic suggestions and contacts of members of the network. So I'll let you talk about it.
Okay, so today's workshop is all about evidence, and I'll say what I mean by that in a minute. And originally it kind of grew from a personal concern that both of us, I think, have had, because Rachel and I have been doing our jobs in mathematical science communication for a frighteningly long time. And we both learned the communications aspect on the job, because we both have a maths background, we don't have a comms background, we don't have a journalistic background. And we were lucky to learn from some of the best people, and some of them are here today. But still, all this time, over the years, there's a couple of things at the back of our mind, or sometimes at the forefront of our mind. One of them was that we've been, over the years, being given so many good pieces of advice, so many tips, so much best practice on how to communicate these complex ideas. And these kind of advice and tips, they range, they concern anything from how to use metaphors or the use of metaphors, whether or not to use equation, sentence structure, paragraph structure, use of images, all sorts of things. And they all certainly seemed like very good pieces of advice, and they all made sense, but then there was always this question, well, is there any evidence that these things actually work and that these are good techniques to get information across? What do we know about how people perceive this stuff? And then the related aspect, sort of the other side of the coin, is like, how do we properly measure and evaluate the impact that the stuff that we do produce and put out there has on people? And, you know, that's difficult. I mean, partly it's because it's harder than you might think to analyze standard website statistics, especially if you're not asking users to leave any data because you want them to have very easy access to your stuff so they don't register. More generally, if communication is about reaching people, how do you then reach the people you haven't reached to find out why you haven't reached them and why they're not engaging? And also on the practical side, the question is like, how do we properly embed evaluation and measurement of impact in our everyday working rather than having it something we do later or on the side? So these are sort of important questions that we've had all the way through. And of course, I know that there's brilliant work out there concerning some of these things, some of the work done by people who are here today that we'll hear from later. You know, and I also knew there's great work pertaining to communications more generally, but I certainly didn't feel I had an overview of everything that's out there, or that I necessarily knew how to use that in my day-to-day work. And of course, yeah, I mean, lots of you probably have similar experiences. And I thought, well, maybe this is just a personal concern or a personal ignorance on our part, or my part, I should say. But then in discussions with the Mathsci-comm network, we realized that it's a sort of wider concern. Like there was a general agreement that in some aspects of communication of these kind of maths and data sciences, there's a bit of a black hole regarding evidence. And I think it was Kevin McConway who said at a talk here in the summer that the communications thing, it does often feel more like a craft than it is a science. So it's for this reason that we thought like we will focus today on this general questions of evidence. So it's like, what evidence is out there for what kinds of types of communication work? What can we learn from other fields? And how can we gather evidence and measure impact? And how can we learn from each other? So that's the general idea of today. And we're really looking forward to the talks because, yeah, I think they're going to be quite amazing. But first of all, there's another aspect to today, and Rachel will tell you about that now.
Okay, so this is a bit of an invitation to join us in an experiment. We're all going to get a lot of information out of the talks today and the panel discussions. But really, the other resource, the thing that made the January 23 event so important was the opportunity to meet and network and chat. And we individually got lots out of that. But what we want to do is try and basically capture as much of the knowledge in the room today as we can. And we will take it away and we will produce some documents, hopefully summarizing some of the topics in the discussion. And I'll show you through the kind of information we have. So there's a number of ways you can participate in the experiment. We hope you all do. The first is quite old school. The INI is famous for its blackboards. I'm sure anyone who's been to the bathroom will have seen that even in the bathrooms there are blackboards. So you too can have the unique INI experience of using blackboards. In the coffee area, we've got 4 questions written on the blackboards there. Please do add your answers to the questions. If you see an answer you agree with, please put a tick next to it so we get a sense of which of the answers are shared by more people. But then we also have a more modern version of the Blackboard, which is a Padlet, which is an online space that we can share discussions and register our ideas. So you can either scan the QR code, you can put in the URL. That's also on the back of your programs. There's the QR code is there as well. It's easiest to use on a laptop, but you can use it on your phone as well. I'll just give you a look of what it looks like. This is what it will look like when you go there. It's divided into sections. The first section is just essentially telling you how to use the Padlet, what we're going to use it for. To add a response to a section, you just click the plus sign. I'm not sure if you can see it next to the welcome, and it should add a post. On a phone, there's a blue plus sign that you click to add a response. On a phone, you have to select which section you're going to reply to. So the main one to start adding responses to is, as you're sitting listening to the talks, if you have a question that arises as you're listening to someone, if you have a comment or you something you'd like to share with everyone about those talks, please do add a post. When you add a post, if you see something someone else has written that you think looks really interesting, if you click the heart sign, it just registers that for us that people think this is a really interesting idea. And then you can add comments under any post to discuss the idea. The other thing is we have a really packed program today because there were so many people we wanted to hear from. So there may not be space for everyone's questions after each talk. There's also opportunities in the panel discussions, but this is the other place that you can register your questions and have them responded to. Then we have some sections which mimic the questions that are being asked on the blackboards next door. So again, please add your answers. Click the heart if you agree with someone else's answers. On Padlet, you get the chance to maybe have a discussion about people's answers. We will keep the Padlet open after the meeting for a length of time we are yet to determine. So there'll be the opportunity to maybe carry on the discussion after the event as well. And we will copy over any answers that have appeared on the blackboards that we haven't seen in the Padlet. This is the rest of the answers from next door. What could the wider mathematical science community do to embed comms in a systematic way? Will obviously feed into the ideas discussed today in the coffee room and put up on the blackboards and added to the Padlet. We're actually hoping that it will feed into the discussions of today as well. So it's a chance for you to maybe make some points during the day that we can make sure the discussion panels later in the day know about. And you'll see a link there to Kevin and Tom's follow-on proposals from the January event. The resource list is perhaps what I think could be one of the best outcomes of today. A lot of people in the room have their own expertise, and we'd really like you to share it with us. If you have any resources, particularly related to evidence in the discussions today, please do add them as a post, and we will draw them together and make a document to be shared amongst everyone who's participated and the wider Mathsci-comm network after today. I think that could be one of the most useful outcomes of today. Also, if there's any resources you think the community might be interested that aren't specifically related to evidence, I know we talked to Sam about the work he's doing at IMSI, please do add them there as well and just make a note. There's a chance for you to discuss those items. If you can put a link to it or if you can tell us how to access it, that would be great. But we think that resource list that we build from today could be one of the most useful outcomes that we can have from today. And the last section is just about looking to the future, what you'd like Mathsci-comm to do next. Things like that. What else was I going to say? The other third part of this experiment is the standard feedback forms, the paper forms in your packs. Please do fill them in. They have opportunity to give practical feedback on the event, but there's also additional questions in there about you and your experiences that we would really like to gather that data to build a picture of the community who do this kind of work. There are a couple of pages, but they're really quick to answer. So please do fill those in before you go. We'll tell you about that again later in the day. But your responses to this, the feedback forms, to the blackboards and the Padlet, as well as the discussions today, will really help us as a community figure out where we want to go next and what we want to do next. And the information that we use, we'll try and pull into a few documents to share with everyone at the end of the day, summarising the kind of themes and topics that have emerged from the day, also talking about the kind of ideas that the community feels are important that might help us shape future work or might provide a useful resource for someone saying, I think it's important in my organisation that I do this work and this document helps justify that because we had this meeting and all of these people thought that was a really valuable contribution to make. This event, as we've said, is very much a group effort, and anything that we produce from this event will be a group effort. So in order to make it work, make it bigger than the sum of us, all of our individual work, please do get involved if you can in whatever way you find useful. And there's a space on the Padlet and in the feedback form to say you'd like to be acknowledged as a participant of today in any outcomes that we produce. So please do add your name and organisation if you do. I think that's everything from us. It's really fantastic to have you here. Thank you so much to the INI for supporting the event, the Gateway for helping us organising it, particularly Maha, all the work that she's done over the months leading up to this. And thank you very much to the speakers and the chairs for coming along. We're personally really excited to hear what everyone has to say, so thank you very much.